Hey everybody, this is Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com, and I haven't done a video in a couple of days and thought it was time to post a new one. So today I want to talk about sidechaining. That's a phrase that you'll hear fairly often in the audio world, but a lot of people don't know what it is and why you would use it. Now, there's a lot of uses for sidechaining, but probably the biggest one is to use sidechaining to get your kick drum and bass guitar to play nicely together. So what is sidechaining? Well, basically, it's using a compressor on a track, but instead of triggering the compressor with the audio from that track, you trigger it with audio from somewhere else. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look here. I've got a session here, and we're just looping a little 8-bar section. And right now, I've just got drums and bass playing. Okay, sounds good. Bass has got a little bit of a drive to it, which works well for this song in the full mix. So now we, typically you're going to compress things in a rock song. You're going to compress the kick and the bass drum, or the kick and the bass most likely. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. Sidechaining is separate from any compression that you're going to do. So we'll come in and pull up just the stock Digi compressor. Now, obviously, if we use this just as a straightforward compressor, we'll get the same old results. Set a fairly high threshold, or set a fairly high ratio, lower the threshold, and we get this. So it just compresses everything, right? Well, that's not what we're talking about. Obviously, we'll still want to compress this bass and do some compression on there just to tighten it up. But one of the things you'll notice, let's say we've got it all like we want it, you'll notice that the kick drum and the bass are kind of competing with each other. If you listen, it's hard to distinguish one from the other. Especially when they're playing together. When they both hit at the same time, the bass muffles the kick and the kick is kind of on top of the bass. So what do? Well, in this particular instance, we want the kick drum to be the driving force. We wanted that thud of the kick drum to come through every time it's played. So what we'd like to do is when the bass plays right with the kick drum, we want to turn the bass down just for a split second to let that kick come through and then let the bass come back in. So how do we do that? We do that with sidechaining. Now, the way sidechaining works, I've already got this set up on another plugin. Let's take a look at this one. Now, this is that same plugin, but you'll notice over in this section, it has a sidechain section, and over here you'll see there's a key and a little drop-down menu. What this is right now, as the compressor stands in normal just compressor mode, it's just a regular compressor. So it's on the bass track, so it's listening to the bass audio, and it compresses it accordingly. But another thing you can do is you can, instead of it listening to the bass audio itself and compressing depending on what the bass audio is doing, you can have another piece of audio routed to this compressor, and then that piece of audio will determine how much compression happens on the bass. So the compressor listens to something else and compresses the bass. So in this instance, the compressor is going to listen to the kick drum, but it's going to be compressing the bass. Now, how do we do that? Well, first off, we need to come over here to our kick drum, and we need to... Actually, I'll show you how to do this as well. We'll need to take a copy of the kick drum and send it to an unused bus. So if we come in here, we'll just pick bus 30, because that's not being used. And here it is, and we'll do a pre-fader send. Now, we're just sending it to listen to the compressor. This has nothing to do with audio. You're not going to hear this bass at all. So we come back over to this plugin, and we come over here to the key input, and we select that same bus. So now this key input is listening to whatever's feeding this bus, which is the kick drum. And if we come over here and we turn sidechaining on and we click on this little speaker and hit play, we're going to actually be listening to the kick drum. So what's happening right now, we've soloed the bass track and we're listening to the key input. So that's what we're listening to here. Okay, if that makes sense. Now, so the compressor's listening to that. So whenever it hears that kick drum, it's going to compress based on whatever compression settings we have here and turn the bass down. So all in all, it's kind of a roundabout way of showing it to you. What's going to happen is whenever the kick hits, the bass is going to get turned down fairly quickly with a slow attack, and it's going to be released a little bit slower, but it's still going to come back in. So you'll listen, if I play everything together, when I hit play, you'll hear the kick drum, and the bass will get turned down just a little bit when the kick drum hits, but it'll still be there. We're still listening to the kick. Here we go. Let's try it now. Now, if we solo the bass, then you'll notice we can listen to it with how that compression is working. Now you may be wondering, why not just turn the bass down, or why not just do regular compression on the bass? Well, the thing here is the kick drum's doing a very steady rhythm. It's going boom, 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 boom. But the bass player plays that. He plays dom, 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 ba-da-doom, boom. So he plays these different little runs and things. So I don't want those runs to be compressed. I just want it where it's playing with the kick to be compressed. And the only way to do that effectively is to use sidechaining. So now it's only compressing the bass, that dramatic compression, when the kick drum comes through. And now I've set it fairly dramatically so you can hear the difference. You would probably make it a little more subtle than that. But let me just play everything together, and I'm just going to bypass this compressor on and off so you can hear the difference. And what you're going to listen for is how the kick and the bass drum are on top of each other when it's bypassed, and then when I turn it back on, the kick and the bass are a little bit separate. You hear the kick and then you hear the bass, and it seems to be a bit tighter. So that's sidechaining. There's a lot more to it. You can do a lot of different things with sidechaining. You could have, you could set up a bunch of snare drum hits on quarter notes and then have that trigger a synth of some sort to create this real choppy sounding synth. And you can do lots of different things like that. But this is probably the most popular or the most common way that you'll find people using sidechaining. And like I said before, that's a little dramatic, but if you were to adjust that and make it a little more subtle in your mixes, you'll notice your kick drum's going to stand out a little bit more without having to turn down your bass and lose that cool bass part that your bass player recorded. Okay, again, I'm Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com. Thanks for listening and watching, and I hope this was helpful. We'll see you around soon.